Hello, my name is Zarah,
I'm Joshua Rauf.
and we did our project on the electric vehicle market in the US.
We chose this topic because of the growing popularity of electric vehicles, and we were interested in what steps U.S. states were taking towards sustainability.
So we have three main objectives for our project. Firstly, we want to draw market trend insights from three competing EV brands, Tesla, Rivian, and Hyundai, and as well gauge public opinion on these specific brands. Secondly, we wanted to focus on areas in the US where there's a significant effort to develop EV charging infrastructure, which promotes sustainability. And lastly, we wanted to conduct a predictive analysis and identify future trends in the EV sector from stock market data. So, for our data collection, we started by searching government resources, and we were able to find a CSV file that detailed power distribution stations across the country. We then implemented financial data found from Wikipedia pages to have an economic understanding on our specific EV companies. And for gauging public opinion, we found a website that listed customer reviews for our specific car brands. We cleaned our CSV dataset by taking over 56,000 power stations across the US and filtering for the 46,000 of them that were electric. We then addressed an inconsistency by using a dictionary that maps state codes with their full name, which will improve readability later in our data visualization and GUI. From the Wikipedia pages, we scraped wiki tables with financial information for both Rivian and Tesla. We used regex in the year column so that only the numbers show up in the CSV files. For the inconsistency here, we standardized the revenue column to show the values consistently rounded to 3 decimal places.
For our sentiment data, we again used Beautiful Soup to scrape hundreds of reviews for Tesla and Hyundai. We made two helper functions called Analyze and Get Reviews. We used Get Reviews to grab the body of text for each review. We then used a while loop to go to the next page of reviews until there were no more pages left for the brand. Now, Hyundai doesn't only sell EV, so we filtered for reviews that mentioned one of their EV models. We also aligned the number of reviews with each other to ensure that we take the same sample size of each brand. After creating a dictionary for the data, we then applied the analyze function to each review, applying a pre-trained model to give each review a scores between 0 and 1 in negativity, neutrality, and positivity. For our API source, we utilized Alpha Vantage's API. This gave us up-to-date time series market data for each of the EV companies. We exported each of these to a CSV with the columns being its date, opening price, high price, low price, close price, and the volume for the day.
We have an additional dataset where we manually retrieved vehicle specs from the company's websites, creating our own CSV file, and the purpose is to display our CSV information in a more creative way.
And now for our sponsor, EV Finder. EV Finder is a totally real, totally not made up software that uses PyQt5 and interacts with our power stations and EV specs data. It generates tailored results, aligning our data with the user's specific preferences. Now let's take a look behind the curtain and see just how EV Finder works. EV Finder first greets us with a nice welcome message, prompting us to enter our preferences below. Let's enter our city, our state, and what type of vehicle we're looking for. I'm looking for a sedan today, and I'm not really sure what my budget is yet. I want to see what's out there, and I'm gonna do all-wheel drive. And looking for a Tesla. Actually, I don't really care what brand it is. So as we can see, 601 power stations are in Atlanta, Georgia. That looks pretty promising, and it recommends to me the Tesla 3 model, the long range, the performance, the S, and the S Plaid. So it looks like Rivian nor Hyundai have all-wheel drive sedans. Now what if I'm looking for an SUV? Here you see we have a lot more options. Rivian and Tesla seem to have an SUV that I'm looking for. What if I'm looking for all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive sedans? Tesla and Hyundai have them. What if I just want Hyundai? Hyundai only has one. Now, what if I want to know how many power stations are in my hometown, Tucker, Georgia? Here, as you can see, there's only 6 power stations in Tucker, Georgia. And that means an EV Finder will give me a warning that the power stations in my city is relatively low, and that may affect the convenience of owning an EV.
For our first insight, we conducted sentiment analysis from customer review websites for Hyundai and Tesla. And as you can see, the bar graph shows sentiment scores based on the reviews for each company and categorizes them as negative, positive, or neutral. We gathered that overall Tesla has higher scores in neutral and positive sentiments, while Hyundai overall has a higher negative sentiment scores. Generally, we found that there is a stronger positive public perception towards Tesla.
Our second insight is from the stock market. Tesla had the highest average closing stock price with $308.42. Tesla also by far had the maximum closing price of $2,238. That's astronomically higher than the other two brands. Tesla also by far had the maximum closing price of $2,238, astronomically higher than the other two brands. We did, however, find that Rivian trades more volume on average than the other two brands, and Hyundai actually shows that it has days without any trading volume, 0. I suspect that this has something related to the special case days on the market and it being a non-American brand. The code you can see to the left simply unpacks and utilizes .describe, which applies many functions operations such as taking the mean and extremes with data frames. In this case, the mean and extremes of stock prices and volumes, and the code on the right is our high and low price visualization. Note the large spike of Tesla during the pandemic.
Here, we're analyzing the wiki tables regarding Tesla and Rivian financials. From comparing the years column with the net income column, we noted that Tesla's losses steepened between 2008 and 2012, presumably because of the house market crash. However, we can highlight Tesla's adaptability from seeing their drastic growth during the COVID pandemic, where they grew exponentially while other car brands failed to maintain. Since Rivian is a fairly new company, we'll just have to see how the company performs in a future recession. We wanted to gain insight on EV viability throughout the United States. So for our fourth insight, we created a bar graph that shows the amount of power distribution stations in each state. We found that the states with the most power stations are California, New York, and Florida. So these are the areas that have a high concentration of EV infrastructure, while states such as Alaska, South Dakota, and North Dakota have the fewest amount of power stations.
For our fifth insight, we started by counting the number of power stations using dot value counts and lambda function to split the value into 5-year intervals. Then we printed out the data frame showing the number of power stations in the US every 5 years. It's very apparent from the data here that most of all the relevant growth in the infrastructure is between 2005 and 2023, with less than 200 being built before 2005. For our fourth data visualization, we selected 3 states at random from all of the US regions. We then plotted the amount of power stations in each of those US states against time and years, with yellow meaning less power distribution centers in that location at that time, and blue meaning more. Now, initially, we included California in our Western region states, but that skewed the visualization far too much. So we switched it for Nevada, which surprised us with how little it had. We still would say that the South, represented by Texas and Florida, and the Midwest, represented by Ohio, Illinois, and Michigan, also show notable activity, but with a later start and more gradual increase compared to the West. We also wanted to note the deep blue colors of Massachusetts, New York, and Texas in the past few years.
In conclusion, for market trends and brand competitiveness, we can tell that Tesla's favorable sentiment scores reflect its strong market position and positive brand perception, likely contributing to its success in the EV market despite Hyundai's longer history in the car industry. For EV viability, we can conclude from our CSV states bar graph that California, New York, and Florida are amongst the most favorable places to own an EV, and that these areas have showed an effort in developing EV charging infrastructure. Finally, from our project, we can give a predictive analysis for each of the EV companies. We can conclude that Tesla is likely to maintain its lead in the EV market given its high leading stock prices and trading volume. For Rivian, we can fairly judge that the company has potential for both growth and decline. Future growth will have to depend on upcoming product launches and scaling production capabilities. Hyundai's trading volume is relatively low, which suggests a more conservative investment profile. So its growth in the EV sector might be steady but slower in comparison to Tesla and Rivian. Overall, from our analyzations, we can conclude that companies that specialize in EV are likely to continue to charge in the US market.